What I want to talk about today really can be applied in numerous settings. So you can do this as an individual. It's also incredibly powerful to do this work as a team, whether it's your leadership team or a student group, because it fosters such incredible, powerful conversation. And so I wanted to set that context that while it says a personal and professional vision, you could and you should probably do this with a team and a group as well. And so we're going to just jump right in here. And I want to share with you where this came about. About 3 years ago, I was sitting in a meeting and someone said, "Hey, do we have a do we have a vision statement yet?" And then someone else said, "Yeah, do we have one of those?" And it struck me that this important concept of a vision, vivid picture of where we're going and why we are, came down to a bullet point on an agenda item. And I often see this with mission statement creation, vision statement creation, that we often relegate what can be one of the most compelling motivators in an organization and in our lives to a bullet point item or just a statement. We get into the wordsmithing and we forget about the key activity of what it means to envision our future, to think about our purpose and the reason that why we exist and the problem we exist to solve. And so there there needs to be a bigger process for uncovering vision. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I want to start with just giving you some of the data on when employees, people not in a positional leadership role, were surveyed on what they looked for in a leader. Across numerous studies, over 78% of respondents indicated that a clear vision of where we were going was incredibly important to them. At the same time, when we look at the research of what leaders actually spend their time on, and maybe I can ask you to think about this, how much time do you spend out of any given day envisioning what the future could be like because you exist or your organization exists? And if you thought maybe like me, not much time, you're right in line with the research, because research finds that just 3% of leaders' time, those in positional roles of leadership, so they have responsibility over organizations or numerous other people, spend about 3% of their overall time being involved in actively envisioning the future and enlisting others in that compelling vision. And so today, I want to make the distinction between just a vision statement and what's in this last sentence here, the act of envisioning. The best leaders don't just have a vision, but they know how to envision the future. And so the process that we're going to go through today is really about the activity, the exercise of envisioning. And then that statement, that vision statement, inevitably just expresses the envisioning process that was already there. And when we do this envisioning well, research finds it can really compel people and ourselves in life more so than almost any other motivational force or motivational factor. And so here's where I want to start, because you may be thinking right now, okay, I've had a lot of experience. I've been through thinking about mission, vision, purpose. There's a lot of just jargon out there about these things. And I want to clear up what we mean by vision, what I mean by mission, and what I mean by purpose. Oftentimes, people say they're interchangeable, but I'm going to take a stance here and say that they're not, and that we need all three for effective visioning. So let me just go over what I mean here to set us up for the rest of the session. When I talk about a vision, I'm talking about what will be different and better about the world when you're done doing whatever it is that you're doing. What will the world look like? What will it feel like socially, technologically, environmentally, economically, politically? What is that vivid vision? You've probably heard people say, we imagine a world, and usually those words signify a powerful vision. What would the world be like when your career services department was done delivering on what you deliver on? That vivid picture is what really can compel people and mesh people in where you're going. Now, a purpose is required to have a vision, because a vision without a reason is pretty much just a grand hope. Purpose is that idea of why you exist, and really specifically, what problem do you exist to solve? And when I say problem over the course of the session, I'm not talking about just that something's bad or something's wrong, but I'm talking about human problem. And that could be something that, what could be better about human beings' lives because you exist? And so a purpose is really a prerequisite for a vision, because it asks the question, why do you exist and what problem do you exist to solve? And when you contrast that to vision, the vision is really asking you to think about, what would the world be like without that problem? And then mission, as you've heard, is necessary, right? I think there's a great quote that says, a vision without a task is useless. A task without a vision is just busy work. But when you align these and you have a purpose, you have a reason for being, a problem you exist to solve, and then you have the hows, how you actually go about fulfilling your purpose, to then make the difference that you want to make. And so this is the framework that I've been using with organizations of many sizes and individuals, and it's incredibly powerful. So a vision, in order to have an effective, compelling vision, we have to have a problem that we solve, a really clear depiction of what that problem is, why we are the ones that can solve it, what resources we have to meet that need, which is our purpose, and then a mission, which is exactly how we fulfill that purpose, the things that we do to go about fulfilling that purpose, and then ultimately that leads to our vision. What will the world be like when you're done? So why do you exist? How do you fulfill your purpose? And what will be different about the world when you're done? Now, we are a what-obsessed society. So we are obsessed with hows and whats and strategies and solutions. And so today I'm not going to talk about mission, because I'm assuming that most of you know what you do and how you do it. It's incredibly prevalent in our narrative, just in general, to think about mission. And so that's probably there for you. What's often missing is the ingredients that cause psychological and emotional commitment, the why. You know, people don't really care about the solutions you offer. They're moved by the problems you exist to solve. And then ultimately that envisioning what it will be like when you've accomplished that purpose. So we're going to focus on these ingredients of building a sense of purpose to build a sense of vision. So again, building a sense of purpose to build a vision by envisioning what the future will be like when you're done. I want to give you an example of this in action, because it always helps me when I see a framework. I was working with a big hospital system on purpose, mission statements, vision statements. Everybody was very confused. They had had numerous consultants come in and talk about this. And I just want to walk through that framework with you about what this can look like. Again, here's the why we exist, right? The problem for this healthcare institution was that health issues gave and restricted people's freedom to live the lives they wanted to live. That was the problem that was identified. And so that problem fueled their purpose. So we exist to give people the freedom to live extraordinary lives. You'll notice that this why has nothing to do with what they do or how they do that, but it all is focused on that bigger problem that fuels their purpose. How they pursue that purpose is their mission. So how do we give people the freedom to live extraordinary lives? How do we fulfill that purpose? Well, they improve lives, and in big ways, such as learning, healing, and discovery, in small personal ways through human connections. Those are the things that they do as a hospital system to improve lives, but in all ways, they go back to improving lives, solving the problem that health issues can restrict people from living extraordinary lives. And then finally, what will be different about the world when they're done? Their vision is moving from healthcare to health. That if they were successful in ensuring that everybody had access to healthcare and they could live extraordinary lives, then there would be this holistic view of overall health, and they wouldn't even need healthcare. Oftentimes I say that vision could be a vision of a world in which you're no longer needed, which is why it's incredibly compelling. Most visions will never be accomplished. which is exactly why they're so powerful, which I'll talk about at the end of today's session. So here's how we're going to work through this. We're going to work through this by thinking about 3 questions you can ask yourself and your team collectively. This can be done as an individual exercise or in a group. I recommend both to get at these ideas of purpose and to ultimately build that vision that we're talking about. So here are the 3 key envisioning questions when you're thinking about building a compelling vision. The first is to ask, what is my problem? What is the problem we exist to solve? The second is, what is my purpose? And the third is, what will the world be like if I fulfill that purpose? This could be really powerful with students. It could be powerful with staff members. It could be powerful with family as well. What is our problem? What is the human condition we're trying to make better? Why us to fulfill and meet that need? And then what will the world be like if we were done? So I love this quote from Blake Mycoskie, the founder of Tom's. He wrote a book called Start Something That Matters. And he says, you know, what our society really needs is a redefinition of success. And he gives his definition that success is filling a meaningful need better than anybody else. What I like about that quote is that anybody can do it. Anybody can be successful by looking for a meaningful need, which everybody on this webinar right now has one that you fill, and filling it and seeking to fill it better than anybody else. So that redefinition of success to being problem-centered is powerful. And so answering that question, what is my problem, is incredibly transformative and fosters innovative thinking. This is the napkin that Herb Kelleher, who passed away last week, who was the original founder of Southwest Airlines, came up with the idea for Southwest Airlines. And it's a great example of identifying a problem as the root of your vision and your organization, whether this is a for-profit example, but in education or wherever you are. And Herb Kelleher was sitting at a bar and he wrote down this question: why do only 15% of Americans fly? And essentially that question was rooted in the problem that most of Americans could not afford air travel. It was that question that spurred Southwest Airlines to create the solution of a low-cost carrier by focusing on local flights, which you see here on this napkin that he wrote on in that bar in San Antonio. But that problem of people couldn't afford to fly fueled Southwest's purpose, which was to democratize the skies, to provide access to air travel across the socioeconomic spectrum, which inevitably fueled everything that they do. And if you look at the engagement statistics and employee fulfillment statistics and customer service ratings of Southwest Airlines, and you trace it back to this compelling vision, you can see this in action, that people aren't moved by the solutions of just offering an airline. You know, United Airlines' vision is to be the most profitable multinational carrier. And the problem with that is they've achieved it, and it's not human-centric. But people are emotionally moved by the problem you exist to solve. So just reflect on this. What dominates the narrative in your own life or in your own office or organization? Is the narrative really around what solutions should we offer? What programs should we do? What should we be doing this semester, this quarter? Or are you thinking about what problems do we need to solve? I was doing a session with some nonprofit executive directors, and I asked them what's the biggest problem their organization faces. These are people doing amazing things like making sure that no person goes homeless, making sure that we can end sexual assault, making sure animals have a home. And I asked these executive directors, what's the biggest problem your organization faces? And if you want to guess what that was, people said money, 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 and they went around the table. And the problem is that money is a solution. It's not the problem they exist to solve. And when you lead, for example, them as fundraisers, when they lead with, hey, we need money, versus I help animals go homeless, it's inherently psychologically demotivating. I mean, no one wants to give you money because you need money. They want to give you money because they believe no animal should go homeless if you're a humane society. But because our brains really like facts and solutions and measurables, we tend to focus on this question of, okay, what should we do this quarter versus how can what we do solve this problem? And so thinking about that narrative is powerful because Problems develop empathy because they enable us to think about the other, and empathy can be contagious. Blake Mycoskie, who is the founder of Tom's, was walking around in Argentina, and he saw how many people did not have shoes, how many kids were running around with shoes, and he thought, I need to do something about that. And that's how he built the One for One campaign. If you buy a pair of shoes, he will give a pair of shoes to someone in need. But also what it shows is the power of empathy to be contagious. Blake was walking through an airport one day to a flight, and he was wearing a pair of Tom's shoes, and this woman came up to him and goes, "Oh, I love your shoes. Did you know that they give one of these every pair to someone in need? Did you know that the founder of Tom's was in Argentina, saw this problem?" Little did she know she was talking to Blake Mycoskie, the founder of Tom's. And it just shows the power of a story and the power of collective and shared empathy that is driven by problems. And so to answer this question, and I provided you with a worksheet that you can ask this question to yourselves and your teams. But on one side of a paper, answer this question: what is my problem? And beyond things like responding to a rapidly changing global economy and doing career placement, for example, which is in the CAS standards, those are still solutions, responding to that as solutions. But what could be better about the lives of the human beings you serve? And think creatively about this. For you as a person, like, what do you notice that bothers you? I often ask students to go around for a week and just write down at the end of every day, what did they notice that bothered them, that they thought could be better about the world? And do that as an office. Like, is it the fact that you're helping people to achieve confidence in achieving and acquiring their dream? Because, with resources from a career center or career services entity, people develop confidence. So really think about that problem, and try to think deeper than people need jobs, or people need career development expertise, or people don't know how to write a resume. And start thinking more of what's the deeper problem there, that people need direction, they need inspiration, they need to know that they have potential, they need to believe in themselves. There's a lack of self-agency amongst the millennial generation and Gen Z. And when we can think about that in those ways, that can be really a compelling driver of creating your vision. So the first step here today is to describe that problem vividly. So on that left hand sheet of paper where it says problem, what is your problem that you solve? And I like to use the STEEP forces, which are the social, technological, environmental, economic, and political forces that are involved in that problem, because it gives you a better sense of understanding that human problems are holistic. So the second question, after you've understood that problem, which for Southwest, for example, was that only 15% of Americans could afford to fly, you then start asking, okay, what is my purpose? Why am I best equipped to fulfill that problem? And the problem, once you have that clearly defined, will always fuel the purpose. So Southwest's purpose is to democratize the skies. It makes sense. So they are a low-cost carrier that provides access to air travel across the socioeconomic spectrum. That's how a problem fuels a purpose statement. And so anytime you're using your unique resources, and the way I conceptualize resources is as your talents and your passions, so the things that you're good at and the things that energize you to meet that human problem you've identified, you're on purpose. Now, you have collective energy and collective strengths as a department as well. And so the way that you use those strengths to meet that human need is your purpose. And purpose is really defined as the reason for which something is done or created, something's use or usefulness. So when someone asks, what's your purpose statement? They're really asking for a statement that expresses what use are you to the world, which is fueled by the problem that you exist to solve. So this question that you can ask yourself is, what is my purpose? And purpose tends to come from the intersection of three things. Again, passion, what you love to do. These are the things that energize you on a daily basis. They're the things that you don't even necessarily think about, but you leave them and you are in that flow state. And then really think deeper about that question too. Some people say that, oh, well, I'm passionate all the time, or my job is inherently passionate. Then ask yourself, what are the things that you're doing when you feel most passionate? And you can get some themes and more specific themes there. The next question is, what are my talents? What am I good at? This is really important to make this distinction. Tools like Strengths Quest and MBTI, they generally focus on what we're good at, what attributes we have, but you can be really good at something and have a personality style that drains the life out of you. So the overlap between your passion and talent really becomes the psychological definition of strengths. So write down, what are the things you love to do as an office, as a department? What are the things you love to do? What are the things that you're especially good at? And then finally, that impact is the problem you exist to solve, which brings it all together. And that's where your purpose arises, where your resources meet a human need. That problem you identified is your purpose. So I've included a great tool. If anybody's done Mad Libs, this is like Mad Libs for purpose, to be able to state your purpose in a compelling way that draws on your resources. So think about that problem descriptor that you've had. Look at this statement, and then look at what you've identified as your resources, those strengths that are the overlap of passions and talents, and then try to fill this out. You know, my or our purpose is to do what? What is your strength in action? You know, mine, for example, is inspire. And then the second is who. Who will you inspire? Who are the human beings that are the recipient of everything that you do? And then what will they be able to do, be, think, feel, or have because of you? Now, that last line, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, yes, that goes right back to defining that problem. So that is your impact, that problem that you've described. So, for example, I found that there's a lack of fulfillment and a sense of purpose in a large variety of organizations, and it's really hurting people's engagement, both in their lives and in their work. And so my purpose is to inspire people and organizations to discover and enact their purpose so that they'll thrive. What's your purpose? What's your statement of why you're best equipped as an office, as a person, to meet the problem that you described? I was working with a car wash company here in Colorado that gives a great example of how a problem fuels a great purpose statement. And the general manager here in this picture said, well, Zach, we wash cars. We don't really have a compelling problem. Everything that we do on planet Earth, most jobs solve, fill, or fulfill some sort of human need or problem. And he woke up one night and he texted me and he goes, Zach, I got it. No one wants to work at a car wash. Like, no one gets up and says, yeah, it's my life's goal to work at a car wash. They work with a lot of people who have a lower education, who have just a GED. And so he said our resources are really to be able to provide the environment that can prepare them for their future. And so this is a car wash's purpose, to prepare people for the future and provide for the community. Now, they started aligning that big purpose with a vision, which was to make sure that everybody had a plan for their future who worked for them. And what happened was powerful. 80% of all their employees were retained for at least 1 year, and they had over 1 million cars washed per year, which was over 10 times the industry average, because they invested so strongly in giving employees 401ks, creating personal development plans. They knew their problem. They knew their resources as a company to solve that problem. And the result of that purpose was that they were incredibly profitable and successful. And I often say this, you know, when you make a meaningful contribution, the results follow. And so the second step is to state your purpose. Make sure that you state it, it responds directly to your problem. So you have your problem, you have your purpose, and now is the fun part of the active envisioning. You're ready to sort of envision this world where you're done. What would it be like? What would it feel like? And Elon Musk gives us a good example. I know he's had some issues in the news lately regarding to work-life balance, but he's never had an issue with developing a really crystal clear vision for the future. And he recently said in an interview, I want to contribute as much as possible to humans becoming a multi-planet species. So the problem is that we only have one planet to call home. His purpose is to develop this technology that will enable people to go to space, all people. And then his vision is that we're a multi-planet species. Imagine a world where we had multiple places to call home. And I want to just share with you, as we're working through this example, of what Southwest's ultimate vision was. Remember, the problem is only 15% of Americans can fly. The purpose is that they democratize the skies, And the vision is that all people would be connected to what matters and what's important in their lives. So imagining a world in which all people were able to be connected to what's important in their lives, and what would that look like, and how would we know that we were successful. So that vision is what would the world look like without your problem. So you have your problem, you have your purpose, and no problem is what the world would look like. Most of the time, it's not possible in your lifetime, but that's precisely where legacy is born. Legacy is built on how we contribute and what we leave behind to do after us, not necessarily what we achieve or what we acquire. So the third step here is to describe in detail what the world would be like without your problem. So on that worksheet that I provided for you on the left-hand side, you have the description of your problem. Now take each of those elements, and on the right-hand side, describe in detail what it would be like without that problem. And again, I use the steep forces here to think about that. For example, let's take a career services example. What would a person's life be like socially, technologically, economically, environmentally, and politically if you fulfilled your purpose for everybody that you worked with? So think about that individual, and then think about the world. What if everybody was able to benefit from the purpose that you provide? What would people be like at work? What kind of jobs would they have? How would they be developed? What would society be like? And then you start slowly getting into this idea where you can create themes that create a statement that says, we imagine a world in which everybody is confident, they have self-agency, they're inspired at work, and they're able to live their dream. I just made that up, but that's an example that I might think about. But that statement expresses the act of envisioning. And that's why coming up with a vision statement should be the last thing that you do. It should just express the process of envisioning that just happened, that we went through. So creating a statement that expresses that holistic vision is incredibly powerful. And so here's a couple of tips for you on creating a statement. One, it should be problem driven. Here's an example. To be a multi-planet species, the problem is that we only have one planet. It conjures a universally good image of some desired future. So the Alzheimer's Association, one of the groups I work with, is to create a world without Alzheimer's. What would that look like? What would it feel like? What would families be like? And if you're like me, like listening right now, I'm even compelled just thinking about that. Like I want to be involved. And then third, it's detached from what's or how's. It's detached from what you do or how you do it. Disney gives an example: to make all people happy. Imagine a world where everybody felt happy. They felt fulfilled. They had an escape. The fourth is that it inspires self-transcendence, so it's other-focused. IKEA is to create a better everyday life for many people. And then finally, it's active, short, accurate, and memorable. NASA is to advance science. What would it be like if science were to advance to the most powerful degree possible? And speaking of NASA, many of you have heard that story of the John F. Kennedy had gone to the Space Center, and he was about to give a speech, and he ran into a custodian and a janitor, and he said, "Hey, what do you do here?" And the janitor said very calmly, "Oh, I'm putting a person on the moon." And then he went very quickly back to his work. Well, we can learn a lot about NASA from instilling and activating that vision once we have it, by making sure we connect every task to that bigger purpose and that bigger vision. And what NASA had in every department is they had what was called a ladder to the moon, where everybody could see how the tasks they did on an everyday basis fulfilled some tangible objective, which led to that vision. So do all the teams you work with, are they able to fulfill this ladder? Do you, when you're working on a task or a change or objective, are you able to see how what you're doing fulfills that bigger vision? When we can, we become better as human beings. And so this is one incredibly powerful way to do this, is to identify behaviors of what it would feel like if you were fulfilling your vision, what you would be like if you were fulfilling your vision, and then what you would do every day, your key behavioral indicators of fulfilling your vision. So take a moment, after this and later on today in a session, and think about it. If we were consistently pursuing that big vision, how would we and others feel? For example, you could feel inspired. And then for each of those feelings, identify who you would need to be, how you would need to show up, what your mindset would need to be. Well, to feel inspired, we would need to be energized, be involved. And then for each of those being qualities, come up with 1 or 2 specific behaviors. For example, to be energized, I would have to spend time each week reflecting on my impact. I would have to ask thoughtful questions daily to be involved. Once you get to this place, now you have a plan for what I call the key behavioral indicators of your vision. And you can then reflect on this, build those key behaviors into your own goals, build those key behaviors into performance evaluations for others, and now you're starting to create a vision-centered, purpose-driven organization. And so this fifth step here, using that template, which I provided in the worksheet, is to connect and think about how those daily attitudes, values, and behaviors with your purpose align with your purpose, because nobody really cares what you believe the world will be like unless you prove it every day. And so I just want to end today with talking about why this all matters, like why we should care about this. This is Desiree Linden. She's the women's winner of the Boston Marathon. And if anybody watched the Boston Marathon last year, you would know that it was horrible. It was windy, it was rainy, it was 40 degrees, Boston 40 degrees, which is really cold. And Desiree, who's the American winner of the Boston Marathon, first American woman to win the Boston Marathon in 3 decades, she was about to quit. She was about 3 miles into the race. She said, "I'm done. I'm out." She went up to an elite group of runners and she said, "Hey, if you need anything, let me know. I'll get water for you. I'll draft the wind for you." She said in a Runner's World magazine interview after that, she forgot about herself and was connected to this bigger purpose, for one of the first times in her athletic career. She said that when she started helping about 3 or 4 miles after, she remarkably got her legs back. She ended up going and winning the Boston Marathon after wanting to drop out. And this gives us a lesson of what having a compelling purpose and vision that's human-centered and focused on other people every day can do. Neuroscientists and some of Desiree's sports psychologists have found that we get a boost of neurotransmitters called dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin when we're focused on impact, when we're focused on others. These are the neurotransmitters that control for mood, they control for movement, they control for motivation. So if we want to feel better and do better, it makes sense to have a big vision that's focused on contribution, that is embedded in our everyday behaviors. And we know that people are just better when they're purpose-oriented and oriented towards a bigger vision because of those health benefits and how contribution and a big vision that's focused on others really could change us physiologically. And then finally, the market for something to believe in is infinite. We are all, especially right now, looking for something to believe in, something bigger than ourselves. Your users of your services, your family, yourself, we're all yearning to believe in something bigger than ourselves, that we're part of a bigger vision, that we're part of making the world different. And sometimes it can be easy to get bogged down by what I call the tyranny of the urgent, the routines, the needing funding, the lack of resources, to forget that we're a part of something that can make the world better. And so great leaders remind their people of that. So these questions again is, what is your problem? What's that problem you exist to solve? What's your purpose? Why you? What resources do you use to meet that problem? And then what will the world be like if you were done? So I just want to wrap up there and thank you for attending this webinar. One of my favorite things to do is I write a monthly newsletter called The Spark. And in it, I try all sorts of different things related to purpose, and love for you to join me. Check out some of the latest issues. I provide some downloadables every month on some exercises you can use to both connect to purpose, develop visions, and to lead from a purpose perspective. And then would love to connect with you offline if you're interested. So